The $5 bill was damp with sweat by the time Chidinma worked up the nerve to move. She'd been standing behind the mailbox for 6 minutes, watching the black car idle at the curb like something out of the movies her mother didn't let her watch. Her heart knocked against her ribs so hard she thought the man in the expensive coat might hear it from across the street. But she'd heard her mother crying through the bathroom door last night, really crying, the kind she thought no one could hear. And something in Chidinma's small, stubborn chest had decided that was the last night that was allowed to happen. So she stepped out from behind the mailbox, crumpled bill in her fist, and walked straight toward the most dangerous-looking man she'd ever seen. What happened in the next 90 seconds would change everything. But first, she had to survive introducing herself. Before we go back to where this all began, hit that like button if you're already invested, and subscribe so you don't miss a single moment of what's coming. Turn on notifications, because this story is going to break your heart before it puts it back together. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from tonight, because trust me, you're going to want to talk about this one. Now, let's go back. Do-hyun Kang was reviewing shipping manifests on his phone when something small and fierce planted itself directly in his path, forcing his driver to brake so hard the tires chirped against the wet asphalt. He looked up. A girl, maybe 7, both hands wrapped around a bill that looked like it had been folded and unfolded 1,000 times, stood there like she owned the sidewalk. "Are you the guy who fixes problems?" she asked. No greeting, no fear either, which unsettled him more than fear would have. Do-hyun glanced at his driver, who shrugged, then back at the girl. "Depends on the problem. My mom's problem. With money. She thinks I don't know, but I know." The girl thrust the bill toward him like a subpoena. "This is all I have. I want to hire you." Something in his chest, a place he'd spent 15 years training into silence, cracked slightly at the seams. He crouched down, slow, the way you'd approach something wild and easily spooked. Up close, he could see her uniform was 2 sizes too big, hemmed with careful, uneven stitches. Someone had made that dress last another year rather than buy new. "What's your name?" "Chidinma." "What's yours?" "Do-hyun." He almost smiled. "Almost. Chidinma, I think there's been a misunderstanding about what I do. You're rich. You have a driver," Mrs. Adaeze said. "Rich people can fix anything if they want to." Her chin lifted, daring him to disagree. "So I want to hire you to fix my mom. God help him." "I don't think your mother needs fixing." "Then fix the money problem." Her voice cracked, just slightly, the bravado slipping for one unguarded second. "Please," she cried last night. "She thinks I didn't hear." Do-hyun looked at that $5 bill for a long moment. Then, very carefully, he did not take it. "Tell you what," he said, "I'll come talk to your mom myself. Properly. Deal?" Chidinma's whole face lit up like he'd handed her the moon. Deal. He had absolutely no business agreeing to this. He agreed anyway. The apartment door was the color of old rust, and Amara Okafor was 2 seconds from a full breakdown when someone knocked on it. She'd spent the last hour on the phone with a collections agency that spoke to her like she was something to be managed rather than a person, and she still had 4 hours until her ER shift, and Chidinma had disappeared from the living room without a word. And now, someone was knocking like they owned the building. She yanked the door open with a shoe already in her hand. Muscle memory. You didn't survive this neighborhood without a few instincts. The shoe left her hand before her brain fully processed the man standing in her doorway. Tailored coat, unreadable expression, and her daughter standing beside him, grinning like she'd won a prize at the fair. The shoe hit him square in the shoulder. "Get away from my daughter," Amara said, voice low and dangerous, already reaching for the umbrella by the door as backup. "Whatever they're paying you, it's not enough for what I'm not a collector." He held up both hands, the shoe still rolling somewhere behind him on the walkway. There was something almost amused fighting for space beneath his composure. "Your daughter hired me. I came to return this." He held out the $5 bill. Amara's fury faltered, replaced by confusion, and it was in that unguarded second, jaw loose, eyes wide, rain starting to mist the streetlight behind him, that she actually looked at his face. The years peeled back like old paint. Do-hyun, the name came out of her like it had been waiting 15 years for permission. "Do-hyun Kang?" Something shifted behind his eyes. Recognition, disbelief, and underneath it, something warmer that he clearly hadn't expected to feel. You remember me. You were 17. Skinny. Terrified. I hid you in my closet for 6 hours while police searched 3 buildings. She crossed her arms, equal parts defensive and stunned. You looked like you hadn't eaten in a week. You made me rice, burned the bottom of the pot. His mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close enough to count. I never forgot that. I never forgot you owing me a pot. I'll buy you 100 pots. I don't want your pots, Kang. But there was no venom left in it now. Just something soft and off-balance neither of them had a name for yet. Chidinma looked between them like she was watching the best television program of her life. He came back 3 days later, uninvited, arms full of grocery bags. I told you no, Amara said through the cracked door, arms crossed, blocking the entrance with her whole body like she could hold back a man twice her size through sheer stubbornness alone. These aren't for you. He held up the bags, deadpan. They're for Chidinma. I heard she likes plantain chips. This has nothing to do with you. You bought 6 kinds of soup for a 7-year-old. She's a growing child with sophisticated tastes. Do-hyun. Amara pressed her fingers to her temple. Fighting a smile she refused to let win. I don't need saving. I've survived worse than a debt collector. I know. His voice dropped, quieter now, something unguarded slipping through the crack in his armor. I'm not trying to save you. I don't know how to explain it without sounding insane, so I won't try. I'm just going to keep showing up, that's all. Rain started to fall behind him, soft at first, catching gold in the dying porch light. Amara's grip on the door tightened. Neither of them moved. You're going to catch a cold standing there like an idiot, she finally said. Worth it, he said, if it means you keep talking to me. The rain thickened. Neither one stepped back. Neither one closed the door. And somewhere behind them, hidden just out of sight, Chidinma pumped her small fist in silent, gleeful victory, already certain her $5 had bought her the best deal of her life. By the third dinner, Do-hyun had officially lost the fight against Amara's chopsticks. He held them the way a man holds a foreign object he's determined not to be defeated by. Knuckles white, jaw set, a single grain of rice sliding tragically off the tips, for the 4th time in a row. Across the tiny kitchen table, Amara watched with the barely contained delight of a woman witnessing a CEO get humbled by dinner. You run a shipping empire, she said, and you can't pick up a piece of chicken. I run logistics. He speared the chicken with the chopstick like a tiny, defeated harpoon. There's a difference. The difference is, you're losing to rice. I am choosing not to engage with the rice. Sure. She reached over, plucked the chopsticks gently from his hand, and replaced them with a fork before he could protest. Her fingers brushed his, warm and quick, and something electric skittered up his arm that he chose, very deliberately, not to examine. Eat like a man of the people, Kang. He caught her wrist before she could pull away. Just for a second. Just long enough that the air in the kitchen changed temperature. Careful, he said, voice lower than he meant it to be. I might start thinking you like taking care of me. Amara pulled her hand back like she'd touched a stove, though her cheeks betrayed her. Don't flatter yourself. I like watching you suffer. There's a difference. There's that word again. The pepper soup, it turned out, was a mistake of biblical proportions. Do-hyun had insisted that he could handle Nigerian spice levels because he'd survived Sichuan peppercorns in his 20s, a claim Amara had accepted with visible, gleeful skepticism. 3 spoonfuls in, his face had gone the color of a fire alarm, sweat beading along his hairline under the flickering kitchen light, eyes watering so hard he looked like he was reliving a great personal tragedy. Water, he croaked. Is there, milk? Water makes it worse. Amara was already laughing, doubled slightly over the counter, one hand pressed to her chest, like she might actually die from the sight of him. Oh my God, Do-hyun, your face. This isn't funny. It absolutely was funny, and some traitorous part of him was smiling, even through the pain. She grabbed the milk from the fridge, moving quick in the cramped kitchen, and in the chaos of trying to hand it to him while laughing too hard to see straight, she collided directly into his chest. The room went very quiet. His hands came up instinctively to steady her, one at her waist, one bracing against the counter behind her, and for a moment neither of them moved. The overhead light buzzed faintly. Her hand had landed flat against his chest, and she could feel his heart going fast and hard beneath her palm, betraying whatever composed expression he was trying to hold together. "Your heart's racing," she said quietly, not teasing this time. "Is it?" His voice had dropped to something rough and unguarded. "Wonder why?" "Do-hyun?" He kissed her before either of them decided it was a good idea. It wasn't practiced or careful. It was clumsy and sudden, and tasted faintly of pepper soup and milk. And it was, without question, the best thing either of them had felt in years. Her fingers curled into his shirt, his hand slid to the small of her back like it belonged there, like it had been waiting years for permission. "Mom, do you have the—" Chidinma's voice cut through the kitchen like a gunshot. They broke apart so fast Amara nearly knocked the milk carton off the counter, and Do-hyun spun toward the window with the guilty urgency of a man caught doing something far more scandalous than kissing in a kitchen. We were just—" Amara started, breathless, cheeks burning. "He was choking," she said. At the exact moment Do-hyun said, "She was helping me with the—" Chidinma looked between them, arms crossed, wearing the expression of a small judge who had already reached a verdict. "You were kissing. We were not. Your face is the same color as his was when he ate the soup." Chidinma turned and walked back toward her room with the satisfied swagger of a child whose entire matchmaking scheme had just paid off spectacularly. "I'll be in my room, doing homework, for a long time." The door clicked shut. Amara buried her face in her hands, half laughing, half mortified. Do-hyun stood frozen by the counter, milk carton still in hand, looking like a man who'd just been hit by something considerably more dangerous than spicy soup. "You're compromised," Grace said the next morning, arms crossed in his office doorway, not bothering to soften it. "You've missed 2 board calls this week. You're rearranging shipment schedules around dinner reservations. I've worked for you 8 years, Do-hyun. I've never seen you like this. I'm aware." He didn't look up from his desk. Didn't need to. He could still feel the ghost of Amara's palm against his chest if he thought about it too long, which he had several times, at deeply inconvenient moments. "This isn't like you. It's reckless." "I know." He finally met her eyes, something unfamiliar and unguarded in his expression. "I don't care, Grace. For the first time in a long time, I don't care." That night, on Amara's fire escape, wrapped in a blanket against the cool air, she finally said the thing she'd been avoiding for 2 weeks. "I'm scared," she admitted, voice small in the dark. "Not of you. Of this. Of needing someone again. My husband died thinking he'd taken care of everything, and then he was just gone, and I was left holding all of it alone. I don't know how to do this without bracing for it to be taken away." Do-hyun was quiet for a long moment, watching the city lights instead of her face, which somehow made it easier for both of them. "I'm not going anywhere," he said finally. "I know that's not proof. I know words don't fix 15 years of being left to hold things alone, but I'm still going to say it. I'm not going anywhere." Amara looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in years, let herself believe it. Which was, of course, exactly when his phone rang with a number neither of them recognized, his expression shifting instantly from warmth to something sharp and alert. "Do-hyun?" Amara's voice went tight. "What is it?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the screen like it had reached back through time to remind him exactly who he used to be. The knock came like a fist against a coffin lid, 3 hard raps that made the walls feel suddenly thinner than they'd ever been. Amara froze mid-laugh, dish towel still in her hand, the domestic warmth of the evening evaporating in an instant. Do-hyun's whole body changed before he even reached the door, shoulders squaring, jaw tightening, something old and coiled sliding back into place behind his eyes like a mask he'd hoped he'd retired. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. Not a request. She didn't listen. She never did. Victor stood in the doorway in a coat too clean for the neighborhood, smiling the way men smile when they've already decided how a conversation ends. "Mrs. Okafor, I believe we have unfinished business. I told your office, you told my office a great many things." Victor's gaze slid past her, landing on Do-hyun with something that flickered. Recognition, then delight. Kang. I heard the name attached to this address and thought, surely not. And yet, the fluorescent bulb in the hallway buzzed and stuttered. throwing harsh, unkind light across Do-hyun's face. Amara watched something pass between the two men, silent, loaded, a whole language she wasn't fluent in. "You know him?" Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. "We've done business," Victor said, before Do-hyun could answer. "Years ago, Kang's family built half their fortune moving things people weren't supposed to move. Isn't that right?" "That's not," Do-hyun's hands curled at his sides, knuckles whitening. "That's not who I am anymore. Old dogs, Kang." Victor's smile didn't waver. "Old dogs." He left with a shallow bow and a promise to return when Mrs. Okafor is more reasonable, and the door clicked shut behind him, with a finality that felt louder than the knock had been. Amara stood very still in her own kitchen, staring at the man she'd let back into her life, into her daughter's life, like he was suddenly a stranger wearing a familiar face. "You knew him," she said. Not a question. "Amara, you knew him, Do-hyun." Her voice cracked down the middle, fear and betrayal tangled together. "What else haven't you told me?" She didn't let him leave. That was the strange part. Even furious, even shaking, some stubborn part of her needed to hear it, all of it, before she let herself decide what to do with him. They sat on opposite ends of her small couch that night, the city humming faintly through the window, the space between them heavier than it had ever been. 15 years ago, Do-hyun started, voice low, eyes fixed on his own hands like they belonged to someone else. "I wasn't just some kid you hid in a closet. I was already in it, moving things, doing things I told myself didn't count, because I was young, because I didn't have a choice, because—" He stopped, swallowed. Excuses. They were all excuses. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was scared." The word came out rough, unfamiliar in his mouth. "Because for the first time in 15 years, someone looked at me like I was someone worth being kind to, and I didn't want to watch that look disappear." Amara's arms were crossed, her whole body a wall, but her eyes had softened despite herself. "You built an empire out of that world. I built an empire trying to bury it." He finally looked at her, and there was nothing composed left in his expression, just raw, unguarded fear. "Every legitimate contract, every clean deal, every year I spent trying to become someone my mother wouldn't have to lie about at church. It was all because I was trying to outrun who I used to be. I'm not proud of it. I'm not asking you to be either. I didn't know how to tell you without losing this, without losing you." The silence stretched long enough that he thought he already had. "You should have told me," Amara said finally, quieter now. "Not because I need you to be perfect, because I need you to be honest. I've been left in the dark before, Do-hyun. I can't do that again." "I know." His voice broke slightly on the words. "I know, and I'm sorry, and I swear to you. No more dark corners. Whatever this is, you get all of it. Even the ugly parts." Amara studied his face for a long moment, really studied it, the way she had that first night on the doorstep, looking past the expensive coat to the terrified boy underneath. Then she reached over and took his hand. They ended up on the balcony an hour later, the city lights scattered gold beneath them, the earlier tension dissolving into something quieter and far more dangerous. The kind of closeness that came after truth instead of before it. "I should be angrier," Amara murmured, her back against his chest, his arms loose around her waist. "You can still be angry." His voice was low against her ear, warm despite the night air. "I'll take it. I'll take anything, as long as you don't disappear on me." "Careful, Kang." She turned in his arms, close enough now that neither of them was pretending not to want this. That almost sounded like begging. Maybe it was. The kiss that followed was slower than the one in the kitchen, deliberate, unhurried, carrying the full weight of everything they'd both just risked saying out loud. Amara's hands slid up into his hair, his tightened at her waist like he was afraid she might still change her mind. She didn't. Chidinma found them the next morning at the kitchen table, hands loosely linked over 2 cups of coffee, and let out a shriek of pure victory that could probably be heard 3 floors down. "I knew it." She danced an unhinged, gleeful circle around the table, nearly knocking over the milk. "I'm getting a bonus. I should get a bonus for this." "You don't get a bonus," Amara said, fighting a smile. "I invested $5. Chidinma pointed dramatically between them. "This is a return on that investment." Do-hyun, for his part, simply lifted his coffee cup toward the girl in silent, amused salute. right up until his phone buzzed on the table, screen lighting up with Victor's name, the warmth in the room chilling instantly at the sight of it. Do-hyun had negotiated 8-figure shipping contracts without breaking a sweat. He had stared down Victor Sozin in his own doorway without flinching, and yet, standing outside his mother's garden gate with Amara's hand in his, and Chidinma skipping ahead toward the sound of laughter and clinking dishes, his palms were damp for the first time in years. "You're nervous," Amara said, amused, watching him straighten his collar for the third time. "I'm not nervous. Your hand is shaking. That's the wind." "There is no wind, Do-hyun," he exhaled, long and unsteady, golden late-afternoon light catching the tension in his jaw. "My mother has opinions, loud ones, about everything, especially about—" He stopped himself. "About the women you bring home? I've never brought a woman home." The confession slipped out low, almost involuntary, like it cost him something to admit. "You'd be the first." Amara's teasing smile faltered slightly, softened. "Oh, so if she says anything insane in the next hour, I need you to know it doesn't reflect—" "Do-hyun," she squeezed his hand. "Breathe." He didn't get the chance to. The gate swung open, and a small, sharp-eyed woman, in an immaculate hanbok, was already crossing the garden toward them with the terrifying speed of a woman who had spent 30 years waiting for exactly this moment. "So," his mother said, eyes sweeping over Amara with an intensity that made Do-hyun's whole body go rigid. "This is the one." "Uma, you told me nothing." She turned to Amara, delighted. "He tells me nothing. 40 years old and still hiding things from his mother like a teenager. I'm 35, 40 in spirit." She took Amara's hands like they were old friends, warmth replacing scrutiny so fast, Do-hyun's carefully rehearsed defense speech died in his throat. "You, sit, eat, tell me everything about my son that he refuses to tell me himself. Uma, please." "He used to cry during romance films," his mother said conspiratorially, steering Amara toward the table while Do-hyun stood frozen, mortified, forgotten. "Hit it very well. Thought I didn't notice. I was 12. You were 26. Amara's laugh rang out across the garden, bright and unguarded, and something in Do-hyun's chest loosened so completely he nearly stumbled. "She's laughing. She's actually laughing. This might actually be fine." The relief didn't last uninterrupted. Somewhere between the second course and the third, a woman in an elegant green dress, Soo-jin, an old family friend with a laugh calibrated for maximum audience, draped herself against the seat beside Do-hyun with the ease of someone who'd done it 100 times before. "Do-hyun, she said, fingers lingering a beat too long on his forearm. "You've gotten more handsome since the last gathering. Unfair, really." Soo-jin. His tone was polite, distant, eyes flicking instinctively across the table to where Amara sat, watching the exchange with an expression that had gone very carefully neutral. Too neutral. Amara excused herself moments later, walking toward the garden's edge with unhurried steps that were somehow louder than if she'd stormed off. Do-hyun extracted himself from the conversation within seconds, following her into the cooling blue dusk between the hedges, string lights flickering on overhead like scattered stars. "You disappeared fast," he said. "I wanted air." Amara didn't turn around, arms crossed, silhouette outlined by the fairy lights. "Soo-jin seems nice. Are you jealous?" "I don't get jealous." The words came out too fast, too clipped, betraying themselves instantly. Do-hyun's mouth curved, slow and dangerous, closing the distance between them until he was close enough to feel the warmth radiating off her skin in the cool evening air. "You're jealous. I am observing." Her chin lifted, defiant, even as her breath caught at his proximity. "There's a difference. Careful. That's my line. I don't like—" She stopped herself, exhaled hard, frustration and something far softer tangled together in her voice. "I don't like watching someone touch you like they have a right to. That's all. It's not jealousy. It's just information." "Amara," his voice dropped, rough at the edges, hand coming up to gently tilt her chin so she couldn't look anywhere but at him. "I'm only mildly obsessed with you, in case that wasn't clear." "Mildly?" "Extremely." His thumb traced along her jaw, slow, deliberate. "Catastrophically. I stood in that garden pretending to listen to a woman I've known 20 years, And the entire time all I could think about was whether you were still mad at me, and how much I wanted you to not be mad at me, and how I would apparently burn my entire empire down just to see you smile again." The space between them collapsed entirely. Her hands fisted in his shirt, his arm curling around her waist, and the kiss that followed was slow-burning and certain, string lights scattering gold across closed eyes, the noise of the party fading into something distant and irrelevant. "You're ridiculous," she breathed against his mouth. "Extremely," he agreed, and kissed her again. Inside, Grace found Amara refilling her water glass, cheeks still faintly flushed, and leaned against the counter with the knowing look of someone who'd been quietly observing far longer than either of them realized. "I've worked for that man 8 years, Grace said without preamble. Watched him turn down every introduction his mother arranged. Watched him build walls so high I genuinely thought no one would ever get past them." She studied Amara for a long moment. "He hasn't looked at anyone the way he looks at you. Not once. Not ever." Amara's hand stilled on the glass. "I'm not telling you to make you emotional at a family dinner." Grace's smile was small, genuine. "I'm telling you because he'll never say it himself. Not fully, not in those words. So someone should." Across the garden, Do-hyun caught Amara's eye through the window, something unguarded and helpless passing over his face before he could stop it. The exact expression Grace had just described, worn plainly for anyone paying attention to see. Amara's chest tightened with something warm and terrifying and entirely welcome. It was, of course, exactly then that her phone buzzed against the counter, a text from an unknown number, 3 words that drained the warmth from the room instantly. "He'll pay soon." The text sat on Amara's phone like a stone dropped in still water, rings of dread spreading outward long after the initial impact. "He'll pay soon." She showed Do-hyun the message the moment they left his mother's garden, streetlight flickering across his face, as his expression shifted from warmth to something colder, older. The version of him she now understood had spent 15 years learning how to survive men exactly like Victor. "He's trying to scare you," Do-hyun said, jaw tight, thumb moving over the screen like he could will the words away. "It won't work. I'm not scared." Her voice wavered slightly on the last word, betraying her. "Okay, I'm a little scared. You won't need to be." He looked at her, something resolute settling into his features. "I'm ending this tomorrow. All of it. Do-hyun. Not like that." He caught the flicker of alarm crossing her face and softened instantly, cupping her cheek. I'm paying it. All of it. Whatever's left of that debt, it's done. Tomorrow, I don't want your money to be the reason." "It's not the reason." His voice dropped, low and certain. "You are the reason. The money is just how I finally get to stop watching you carry something alone that you never should have had to carry in the first place." Victor didn't come quietly. He arrived at Do-hyun's office the next morning smiling that same unbothered smile, already halfway through a sentence about reasonable arrangements, before Do-hyun slid a folder across the desk that ended the conversation before it began. Documentation, dates, transfers, enough evidence of Victor's own illegal collection practices to bury him twice over. "You're finished," Do-hyun said simply. "The debt's cleared, and if you so much as walk down her street again, this folder goes to every regulator and journalist in the city. Your call." Victor's smile finally faltered. He left without another word, and, off-page, quietly, the way Do-hyun preferred to handle things now, he was never seen near Amara's building again. It was, Do-hyun thought afterward, the single easiest decision he'd made in 15 years. That evening, he showed up at Amara's door holding something small and rectangular, wrapped in brown paper, his hands betraying a nervousness that hadn't shown itself even in his mother's garden. "What is this?" Amara asked, opening the door to find him standing there in the golden wash of the hallway light, Chidinma already peering curiously around her mother's hip. "Open it." She peeled back the paper carefully. Inside was a small frame, and inside that, pressed flat and preserved behind glass, was a $5 bill, worn soft at the corners, folded and unfolded so many times the creases had gone permanently white. "You kept it," she whispered. "I kept it," Do-hyun said, voice rough. 3 years. Moved offices twice. Never once considered leaving it behind. He glanced down at Chidinma, who was watching with wide, delighted eyes, already sensing something enormous was happening. Your daughter hired me to fix a problem. I told myself for a long time that the problem was the debt. It wasn't. The problem was that I'd spent 15 years building an empire so I could forget who I used to be, and then a 7-year-old handed me $5 and reminded me exactly who I wanted to become instead. Do-hyun, I'm not finished. His hands were trembling slightly now, the composed CEO nowhere in evidence, just a man laying himself bare in a hallway that smelled faintly of fried plantain and Mrs. Chen's cooking drifting up from downstairs. I don't know how to do this the normal way. I've never done any of this the normal way, but I know that I love you. I love the way you throw shoes at strangers and burn rice and terrify grown men twice your size. I love that you raised a daughter brave enough to hire a criminal off the street because she believed, somehow, that he could still be good. I love— Okay, Amara said, laughing and crying at the same time, cutting him off because she couldn't wait one more second. Okay, Do-hyun, yes, I love you too, you absolute disaster, come here. The kiss that followed was messy and joyful, framed $5 bill still clutched between them, and from somewhere over Amara's shoulder came an ear-splitting shriek of triumph. I told you. Chidinma was jumping, actually jumping, up and down in the doorway. I told everyone I hired the right guy. Mrs. Chen, who had wandered up the stairwell at the exact wrong, or exactly right, moment with a bag of onions for Amara, stopped dead in the hallway, onions forgotten, face splitting into a delighted grin. Is this a proposal? Should I be filming this? It's not a proposal, Do-hyun said, though the look on his face suggested it was only a matter of time. Not yet, Amara corrected, breathless, grinning against his mouth. Not yet, he agreed, and the promise in those two words settled over the hallway like warm light. Chidinma launched herself at both of them, wrapping her small arms around as much of the two adults as she could reach, and Mrs. Chen, never one to miss a moment, pulled out her phone to snap a photo anyway, onions rolling forgotten across the hallway floor. $5, Chidinma announced grandly, to no one and everyone, was the best investment of my entire life. You were 7, Amara laughed, wiping her eyes. You didn't invest anything. You threatened him. I negotiated. Chidinma crossed her arms, the exact image of her mother. And look how it turned out. Do-hyun pulled both of them closer, the framed $5 bill balanced carefully in one hand, the woman he loved and the girl who'd started it all, held tight in the other arm, and for the first time in 15 years, felt nothing chasing him. No debts, no old names. Just golden hallway light, the smell of onions and plantain, and the sound of Mrs. Chen already calling her sister to tell her everything. Paid in full, he murmured against Amara's hair. Every bit of it, she agreed. And somewhere down the stairwell, Mrs. Chen could be heard saying, loudly, into her phone, "You will not believe what I just witnessed in this hallway."